Hey, it's just so Trish, and this is a video I've put together a while back on how I make books from Google Books. So this is actually just the binding part. So here I have my Tom Swift, and I used a binding tape and leaflets, and I put it together, and this is kind of how it opens up. And we use a lot of these in our curriculum. So I have it held tight with the one, and I'm going to use this book here, Heidi, that I printed up. I'm using a cardstock that I print the title page on because I find it to be a very nice cover. And then I'll actually Mod Podge the top so it has a really nice texture to it. And it seems to be more durable in it. I will take that and I'll cut it in half, but I'm going to set it aside here. So when I'm printing these, I print these in like little booklets. So they all come out and it's in booklet form. I have a whole nother video that I'll have in the description on how to print it out using a Brothers. So here's Pinocchio that I did also. So on Heidi, I'll have to cut that in half. I'm not sure if I do that now or later. But I'll have to take my booklets. And this is why I use a long arm stapler. I have all of these things that I use and how I make printing efficient on a blog post that I'll also put in the description. So here I am grabbing my 5 pages. And I'll take my 5 pages and all I need to do is use my long arm stapler and staple it. So I have my long arm stapled set for 5.5 inches since the length of the paper is 10 inches. And all I'll need to do is to go in there and use it. So I'm using that. I'm also using this press that I made. I mean, literally scrap plywood bolts put together. And this is just so I can get the seam of my binding tight when I glue it so that I'm able to really get a nice hold on it. You'll see if you have looser ones, they kind of fall apart on the one. So I made sure I had the right angle with those 2 pieces there, that I have a good right angle. And then I'm using the wing bolts so that it can come on and off really easily and then really get a good pressure. I'd used other things in the past, but I found definitely using the plywood has been a huge help. And again, I just made this with scraps one day with my husband. I was like, make this happen. I'm showing you here that I need to have enough room so the edge of the paper hangs out so I can glue it. I don't want to glue flesh to the wood. So what I'll have, and then I use a paper cutter, of course. I'll be using a paper cutter to cut my cover in half. And then this is my binding tape. In the link below, I will actually have a link to that binding tape. That stuff is super sticky. And of course, the long arm stapler uses regular staples in that little thing you can move. And here is probably second to the most tedious job, is to come in here and staple. I like to have the staple parts go in the back, so on the binding it'll hide those open parts of the staple. So when you are open to that page, look, of course I don't have staples in there because that's what I do. And I do that just because then my staple, you only would see when the book is open the metal line. You're not going to see the actual prongs of the staple. So I staple it, and then I fold it. These are called foots. Actually, you'll have several foots or booklets into the whole book. The big part, to really get a crispness to it, you really, really want to, see there I'm showing you the line, you know, keeping that staple flush. You really want to score this down. So I think I end up using a pencil to get it really nicely done. Here we go. Do I have a pencil? Like I said, I made this video a year ago. I have printed probably 50 books on my bookshelf from it. So I just kind of folded it over, and now I'm going to go through and do this for all of them. The big part is making sure you got your page numbers the right way. I've folded these in half wrong only to turn around and have to just tear the book apart more often than not by not paying attention. So sometimes I'll sit and I'll go through and I'll count all 5 out because I like to do them in 5. The reason I'm doing them in a 5 booklet setting is any more than that, you kind of get the inside papers stick out farther than the outside papers. And because of that, it's just easier not to, it makes a nicer edge on it. So I had done all the stapling on it. So now I'm using just a pencil. And that's all I have to the video. Sorry, I thought I had more. Okay, so now we're in the second part. Once you have all these stapled in together, you're just going to go through and fold. And then I'm just using the pencil to get a really crisp fold on them. And you go through and you do it to everyone. Again, make sure you're folding them in the right direction. It definitely makes it difficult. If they're not, you'll have a lot of problems later. That was noticed when one of my children were reading one of our books. I think it was The Life of George Washington. And they said everything got a little bit mixed up only because I put it in the wrong direction. And I'll go back over and I'll score it a couple of times. I really want to get this a tight binding. And you do this with all of them. See, I almost folded it backwards. So there I have it. I think I'm checking them. I folded them all backwards. See, this is obviously something I do a lot. I have to check them. So definitely make sure you check them before you go and actually glue them together. And again, just stacking them up. Finding these books, I just look for older book lists, free books. When I find an author, I tend to try and find all the books. So here I have them stacked up. And here is my cover. You do want to, when you glue it, you want to have your cover in. So again, I'm cutting, any paper cutter will work. I am cutting this one, and I want to cut it at 5.5 inches. So make sure you know where your lines are, because the last thing you want to do is cut it wrong and have to reprint it and Mod Podge it. And again, using the Mod Podge to give it a good cover. I like the Mod Podge because it makes it more durable and against the gluing. You can also just use contact paper to do it. So here are all my books together, and now I'm going to use my vise. I believe that's what you would call it, my book vise, to put it in. And I just slide it in there like that. Try to get it tapped in as best as I can without losing any pages or getting them mixed up. Place them in, and then tighten them in. And then I try to get a really good tight seal. Now I'm using the hot glue gun. I really like the hot glue because if your hot glue starts to get brittle or it's not working well, you can actually reheat your hot glue. I keep mine in a little box, and then I use the lid of the box for my hot glue. So get your hot glue stick in, and you can find hot glue sticks at the Dollar Tree. They are very inexpensive. It does take a little bit to heat up, so that usually ends up being a problem. And the big part I use is the actual heating element of it. I use that part to help smooth it out. So one of the things you'll notice is I kind of offset some of my staples. My staples are not all in the same spot, and it's because it will make the book very bulky there. And you don't want that bulk. So do not touch this part I'm pointing to. You touch it and you're going to cry. Cry for mercy. That thing will hurt you. You will be blistered up. So don't touch that thing. But whatever. If you are not used to using hot glue, don't touch it. So now you're simply going to put your glue. I like to start at the end so that I can get a nice flat spot there, since that is the edge of the book. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to fill this in. And I'm using that side nozzle to really work in between the different booklets. So it's got a good hold in it. And just work your way through it. Now there's other things you can use. This one I just happen to use as using the hot glue. I've used flexible liquid glue that I thought I really loved, and as the years gone by, I don't really care for the way it holds up. I find I actually like the way the hot glue holds up the best. I find it stands on the shelf better, and you'll see I'm just kind of pushing it through like this. And it just has a better way of keeping integrity on the spine. So, going through, I have done this before where I've made a full jacket and then I hot glue this part and then I combine it with another one. I found that the binding tape really is the best. It makes this project very simple because I am using this hot glue to bring it together and kind of fuse it together. I also want to make sure I'm smoothing it out so it has a smooth texture here, because that tape will sit on it, and if you don't, you're going to have a lumpy spine and you might not want a lumpy spine. So I just keep kind of going through working it till I find what I like. I want to make sure I have the outside edge. I want to make sure I've caught that cover that I've made, and I just keep going, working the way and just smoothing the best I can until you're kind of satisfied. This is definitely trial and error that you're doing here, but I think you're really going to like the quality that you get right off the bat. But definitely make the point to make a vise. I've done it without, and it's a lot more aggravation. It's less time to make a vise and use a vise and print and bind 10 books than it is to try and do without, because I have done it. So I'll let it sit in here and cool off. If you have experience with hot glue, you know it does not take a lot of time. So I know I'm a little bit finicky. I really want to make sure it cools off, or that it's got a nice hold to it. And see, like, it's already cooling off. I could touch it. So I will let it air out, and in no time at all, I can take it out, which really makes this a nice part about using hot glue versus a liquid glue. I've had a few times where that hot glue is stuck to my boards, but it easily pulled up again, and it wasn't too big of a deal. But there you go. Doesn't that look impressive? Sorry, I wasn't good about using my cameras back then. Now I'm using this tape. I pre-roll it out. So I've measured using my cutter, because this stuff, when you unroll it, is a pain. So I actually like to put my tape on my cutter. And this allows me to be able to pull it back off. It's not impossible. I've stuck it. If it sticks to itself, just give up. You're not getting it. And I know my paper is the width of paper, so it's only 8 1/4 inches. No, 8.5. Yeah, 8.5 inches. So I know to make it enough. Sometimes I'll fold the very tip just to get a nice clean one. And then I put it on there with a stretch. But when I pull it over, I'm actually stretching that tape. It has an amazing stretch to it. And I didn't do the best job. But you know, I'm making this for my kids, not for a library. And then you really want to make sure that you have this adhered to the side. I've had it where it wasn't holding on to the binding, and when it opened up, it came together, and I had to rip it all off and start over. So I'm just trimming the top, and this is all I do. It's incredible how inexpensive it is to actually bind a book. I think I figured out to $1 or $2 for 100 pages. It really just I was in shock. So I hope you like this video. In the description, I am going to have a link to how I print them on a Brother's printer. I hope you like this. Give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And if you want to know more about my bookbinding,